Building a better Bay Area. Moving forward, finding solutions. This is ABC 7 News.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Liz Kreutz in for Kristen Z. Thank you for joining us here on Getting Answers, live on ABC 7, Hulu Live, and wherever you stream. We are asking experts your questions every day at 3 to get answers for you in real time. We have a packed show today. We're going to talk with ABC 7 News insider Phil Matier about the state budget that's being finalized right now and the latest on the effort to recall Governor Gavin Newsom. Also, we're looking ahead to the 4th of July holiday on Sunday and new recommendations on how to gather safely. Dr. George Rutherford will join us around 3:20. But first, we want to get to that situation in Surfside, Florida, where crews are still working around the clock searching for survivors after that condo collapse there in Miami. 10 people we now know are confirmed dead. 151 others remain unaccounted for. Meantime, questions continue to grow about what went wrong and how this could have happened. So joining us now to talk about that is UC Berkeley Professor of Structural Engineering, Khaled Musallam. Professor, thank you so much for being here. We mentioned it's now been just about 5 days since this horrific collapse. Do you have a better sense now at all of how this happened?
Thank you, Liz, for having me. Well, it will take a while until we know exactly what happened, but considering that this building was constructed 40 years ago, one can only speculate that the code provisions that were followed at that time were not as robust as what we have these days. That could be one of the things that investigators should look at. In terms of this kind of collapse, it's very rare. These buildings go through very detailed design and construction process. But for this to happen, there has to be some abnormal kind of effects. Could be things related to the foundation, things related to the soil. We know that Florida has some susceptibility to sinkholes. That could have contributed to that. I have seen some reports about the subsiding of this building that has been taking place over many years. That could be a contributor.
Well, I want to ask you about a New York Times report. They say investigators are now looking at something that may have happened to the lowest part of the complex, possibly in the underground area, part of the garage. What do you think that might have been, and how that maybe could have impacted it?
Well, from what I have seen of the drawings of this building, this is what's called a flat slab or flat plate building type. Where the floors sits directly on the columns. So if the connection between the columns and the slabs is not robust, there is a possibility with excessive loading caused by some external effect like support settlement or soil subsiding, that these connections between the columns and the slabs may fail. And that would lead to this pancake type of collapse. Has the second level where the garage is contributed to that? It's hard to assess at this stage.
So walk us through the sequence then of how the building collapsed. When you look at the video, I'm not sure if we have it, we can show as well, but when you're watching that video, what do you see about how it collapsed and sort of this gradual progression that it took?
Yeah, it looks like some of the columns, maybe in the wing that collapsed, have failed in some overloading, maybe deformation from the base that is not that exceeded the capacity that could be taken by the support system. And from some of the photos show these columns are pretty straight, which means they fail in what we call shear rather than bending. So I don't see much deformation or cracking in these columns. So it looked like they sheared because of this excessive loading, most probably excessive deformation at the base. And when you lose these columns, if you don't have enough redundancy in the flooring system to allow the load that was carried by this column to distribute to other columns, that progressive collapse take place because the other columns are not strong enough to take that load that was carried by these failed columns, and that lead to this domino effect or pancake type of failure where floors fall on top of each other and lead to the video that we all saw.
You know, I know this happened across the country from here, but it really resonates with all of us, especially here in San Francisco, a big city. We have a lot of sky rises. Right. I know a lot of people this weekend I was talking with, they said, this reminds me of the Millennium Tower, which we've heard reports is sinking. So can you draw a parallel there? Should people be concerned about the safety of that building here?
This building is what we call a mid-rise. It's about 40 meters tall. It's definitely not a skyscraper. It's not even a high-rise. High-rises tend to be 100 meters tall or so. So that we should make a distinction between skyscraper and this kind of medium-rise building. Here in California, we worry a lot about earthquakes, obviously. So most of our structures are designed with that in mind. So we end providing a lot of ductility, a lot of resiliency in the designs that we have. Of course, external effects like a hurricane or an earthquake or a fire can lead to these abnormal conditions. So if we have a situation of a building sinking, it has to be monitored. There is no way around it. So if we know there is these abnormal conditions, we have to put a monitoring system in place so we can have an ample warning before a catastrophic failure like this happens. Fortunately, these failures are very rare, but unfortunately, when they happen, they have a lot of consequence. So we need to be aware of that. So the parallel with the situation in San Francisco, in my opinion, is not a big concern, because clearly that was an older design. It's designed in 40 years ago. It's in the waterfront, which is rather harsh environment in terms of corrosion, of reinforcement. When you are in a marine climate, you have a lot of salt attack that go through the micro cracks of concrete and lead to corrosion of the reinforcement, which compromise its capacity.
Right.
Maintenance every 40 years or recertification every 40 years is rather long. Fortunately, that's not the situation we have in San Francisco or in the Bay Area.
Absolutely. I'm glad to hear that, because I know a lot of people were just saying, what does it mean for us? And so I think a lot of people are going to be glad to hear that and have that reassurance from you. I am getting the hard wrap. I know we have a lot of questions about this. I appreciate you taking the time to come on and answer several of them. Professor, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.